was just this past July. I have no family history of cancer. No, I teach yoga, I have a healthy lifestyle, and it just came down to numbers for me. So I'm really proud of my hair today because I haven't had any for about, 7 or 8 months. And so it's just been a really wild ride, and I'm excited to share how that has integrated in with my business with you today, because life happens for sure. Just because you start and run a business does not mean, that you're going to be able to just do that 100% all the time. And luckily, I had some experiences that set me up so my business could thrive while I took care of my health challenges as well. So I'll share with you a little about that. But I'd like to start with a quote. We'll see if any of you can recognize who this is from. It's not super famous, but you might recognize his personality. It says, "All things were created firstly spiritual, then it seems that secondly, all things were created temporal. The laws and principles that tie together the spiritual and temporal things." Let me find the laws and principles that tie together spiritual and temporal things are so complex, so interwoven with each other, so inseparably connected, and yet to the minds of the people they appear so distinct from one another that we evidently need a great deal of experience and reflection to make the subject clear to our understanding. Any guesses on who might have said something like that? Yeah.
Part of it sounds like what was said in the Dr.
Yeah, it wasn't. It was Brigham Young.
Brigham Young.
Yes. He was all about this. And I actually served a church service mission in the Beehive House, giving tours through his home for about 3 years when I was in my early 20s. And so I love his quotes because he's just this big, burly guy, and he has his opinions, I'm sure you know of a few. But he talks about all things were created firstly spiritual, and then it seems that secondly, all things were created temporal. And he talks about the complexity of the laws that balance out the spirit and the body, which is what yoga is all about. So I think that's a beautiful quote to start talking about yoga with at BYU. So does anybody know what the word yoga means? Here? Okay. How many of you have practiced? Have been to a yoga class or seen some yoga done somewhere? Yeah. So yoga is a Sanskrit word, and Sanskrit is a liturgical language of India. So it's much like Latin is to us in the West. It's not a language you would speak, but the names of all these different yoga poses are in Sanskrit, and you'll see a lot of focus on the Sanskrit language when you start practicing yoga, because it's the names of the poses are these funny names, like Ekapada Rajakapatasana is my favorite one to say. But the language of Sanskrit, yoga is a word that comes from Sanskrit, and it means to yoke. That's what the word means. It means to yoke your body, your mind, and your spirit to work as one in the healthiest way possible. And so it has a lot of benefits along those lines of kind of bringing your mind, your stress level down, and your body into a more relaxed state to work more healthy than it would otherwise. It's been an invaluable tool in my life because my story began with health issues. It seems to be that's my story, and that's how yoga fits into my life. It's not that way with everybody, but when I was fairly young, about 29, I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis and fibromyalgia, and I had moved out of state for just a brief period of time. And during that time, this health issue came up, and I had never had health problems before. No one in my family had been sick like that before, and so it just seems like this is the card I drew to have my experience with that in this life, how to work with some of that. And so it was very lucky at the time that my doctor was Indian. I lived in West Texas, and a lot of times in these more remote areas of the country, they'll draw doctors from outside of the country into these places. And so he was from India, and he had a little VHS there at the time that showed what the benefits were. And he said, "You must start practicing yoga." That's what he said to me. And so I thought, okay, I've done it a little bit as kind of a workout to try and stay in shape. And he said, no. And he put this in, and I watched it, and it talked about what yoga does for your body, how it helps your mind better, and how it helps your emotions, and how it helps you feel like more of yourself in your own skin. And it's like I had never understood that aspect to it before. So it was really interesting. And in that journey, I found it very, very helpful as a therapeutic tool. So that's kind of where my focus is. The style of yogas that I teach are, I can teach a class like you'd find at the gym, which is just a really great workout. You build up a really good sweat. But for whatever reason, the clientele I attract and the life experiences I've had to use yoga for more than that for me. And so when I got back to Utah Valley, it was about 1999, I had some acquaintances and friends that were residents up at Sundance that live up there above the resort. And they said, we heard you practice yoga. And in 1999 in Provo, it wasn't that well known. I mean, it wasn't even as socially acceptable as it is now. And they said, would you come teach a class to us? And I said, oh, no, I just practice yoga. I don't teach. I'm not a teacher. And they said, well, just come share with us what you know so far. And I thought, okay, I could do that. I could just share what I'm doing with somebody else, and that would be okay. And it was that experience that sort of lit my fire as far as I really do like practicing this, but I find a tremendous benefit in sharing it with other people and seeing it change their lives. And so one of my favorite stories to tell from way back then about yoga, and one of the things I talk about to my teachers that go through our training at Bodhi Yoga is, in the classes I teach, I'll see a woman come in who's late 50s, early mid-60s, somewhere around there. She's raised 8 kids. She hasn't had much time to really take care of herself. And she's sort of resigned herself to the fact that she's going to age, and kind of given up. And but she's started to hurt. Her joints are hurting. She's got some health problems or something's going on. And so somebody's recommended yoga to her. And she'll show up at my door. And after the first class, I'll ask, how did you like it? What did you think? And she'll say, it hurt. And I have to get from her, is this a torque hurt or is this like a stretch? And she's like, I think it was a stretch, I'm not quite sure. So not real in touch with their own body. And I love it because initially I used to think, well, she'll never come back, But I've seen it time and time again, that by the 4th class, she's highlighted her hair. And it's like, it's over. I know she's going to be just fine because she hasn't given up on aging. She's started to put some energy into herself again. And yoga, that's kind of what yoga does, not just for women, but for men as well. And in fact, women weren't even allowed to practice yoga until probably the last 60 years women had started practicing. It had been primarily a male practice. Women weren't allowed. But in this line of teaching to these friends, I thought, well, I better get myself a certification. And so I sought out the White Lotus Foundation for me to gain my certification because it was non-dogmatic. And I am LDS, so I had been to a lot of different yoga retreats and studied a lot of different styles of yoga. And I didn't want anybody else to really tell me anything that I had to do or be that would conflict with the belief system and the comfort zone that I was already in, but I wanted the benefits of the practice. And the White Lotus Foundation is just very, the focus there for me was, we're going to teach you the basis of yoga and then you go do with it what you will. And I liked that idea because I don't like to be fenced in. I don't like to be boxed into one specific way of being or doing things. So in this practice, once I got certified and came back to Utah County, I started teaching classes. And I put out my flyers thinking, well, I'm going to have 40 people show up, to this class. And the first class, it was fairly small. And over time, I started to get a following in the classes I was teaching. At the time I started teaching yoga classes, my full-time job was in banking. I was a junior, kind of equivalent to a junior vice president of a local bank. And I had been there for about 12 or 13 years. And the branch that I I arranged the purchase of the property and the oversaw the building of the branch on 800 North in Orem. It's now American West Bank, but that was my branch. And they had a beautiful walkout basement office that was just empty. And so I had asked the bank president, would you mind if I taught some yoga classes downstairs, when the bank is closed? And so I started teaching a couple classes a week. And I did that for a few years. And in doing that, I really found that I had a love of teaching, but sometimes there would be a full class and sometimes nobody would show up. And at the time, I had a son. I was a single parent, and I had to schedule time away from my boy, and to go and have some people show up and then no people show up, it felt like a waste of my energy a little bit. And so I sat with it. And in yoga, meditation's kind of a big deal. You learn how to meditate, which is just sort of, there are two sides of the coin when it comes to communicating with God. One is speaking and prayer, and meditation would be listening. And so I sort of sat down and I thought, okay, if I'm really supposed to be teaching these classes, what do I need it to look like for it to meet my minimum of what would be kind of, make me feel fulfilled in doing it. And I sort of sat with it and I thought, okay, I'm in a college town. People here are pretty well educated. Instead of just offering random yoga classes, I'm going to do an 8-week series. And I'll start by teaching yoga and breath work. So start with the basics. So I teach people different yoga breathing techniques and how to incorporate those into their yoga poses. And it was interesting. I had people sign up. And I decided that I needed to be compensated whether they showed up or not. So I set a fee at the beginning of my course, and it was non-refundable. And they come in and they pay their fee, and their fee reserves me there during those times to teach those classes. And that way I knew I would get compensated for it. And so that just little space of sitting with it was really my first experience of how I built my business. And it's a little bit non-traditional, than what you'll get in a business class. My general idea was teaching, and then it's like, how do I find the right people for me to teach? How do I find the right clientele? How do I attract the people that are supposed to run into me and will find value in what I'm doing? And what would be the minimum I'd need to have that be worth my time? And so those were some questions I was sitting with myself as I was teaching these classes. And this was going on, between 2000 and 2003. And in the meantime, I had gotten a certification, and then I'd gone back for some advanced certification in Thai partner yoga therapy. And Thai yoga therapy is, it's really, really interesting. It's a one-on-one practice. I'll see if I can pull it up here. It's a one-on-one practice where my partner comes in for a private session, and it's almost like a massage, but not quite. Thai partner yoga, I will take about 2 hours and move their body through. Let's see if I can get this to work. Do I double click it? Is that right? Here it is. Okay. So I'll take a couple hours and I'll move their body through a yoga practice of their own. See if I can get that to work. It's coming. Here it comes. I just need to get this in the right space. I'm used to my Mac, and it's sort of a little bit different here. So, and so they'll lay on a mat in stretchy clothes, and I'll take them through a series of yoga poses and practices. You can see some of the images there. This is my office, where I stretch their body in different ways, like I'll assist them in a lunge. If you were to see it being done, it looks like physical therapy, you'd look at it and go, it's not a massage and it's not physical therapy. It's sort of a partner yoga practice is basically what it is. And during that time, doing the Thai partner yoga, I came back from that training, from that certification, and my students wanted to know where I was. And I said, well, I went and I did the certification of this Thai partner yoga. And when I went, I was thinking it would make me a better yoga teacher. And to my surprise, people wanted me to work on them. They wanted one-on-one time with the yoga instructor. Then they could ask me all their questions they wanted to ask. And it's a really amazing practice. I'll kneel in their hamstrings, and I'll pull them up into a back bend and do all of these different yoga postures that are assisted that are fantastic. And And in this process, I thought, okay, well, I'm going to take a long lunch. So I came in early at the bank, and I took 2 hours on my lunch. And lo and behold, they wanted to pay me for my time, of course. And so I set out a small fee of about $40 an hour. And it was a 2-hour session, so it was about $80 a session. And I was making only about $22 an hour at the bank. And I thought, oh, interesting. And pretty soon I had students backed up a month out, and all my lunch hours were taken. And so I'd be teaching yoga in the evenings, and I'd be doing Thai partner yoga on my lunch hour. And then finally, with the demand I had, I raised my price to about $120 a session, which is about $60 an hour, which is what it costs for a really decent massage. You'd pay about $60 an hour. And so I knew that there was a demand for what I was doing, and I thought, well, if I could do 2 or 3 Thai sessions a day at $120 a pop, in addition to the yoga classes, then that might be a way I could actually support myself and not have to be in banking. I loved it. I'd been in it for close to 18 years at that point. But ultimately, I made the jump to yoga. And in that process, I had students that were coming to me after yoga class saying, would you certify me as a teacher? And I thought, no, I don't certify people, I just teach, sort of that same old line that I had done before. And in that process of, my students coming to me, it got me thinking. So I sat with it again, and what would that look like if I were to give a teacher training and certify students to teach yoga? What would that look like? And I went back to my own training that had lit my fire in a lot of ways, but had left me wanting in a lot of ways too. And so I developed a program of what my ideal yoga teacher certification would be. And I thought, well, there are a lot of hours I put into this program. It's going to be a really intensive 2-week training. What would I charge per head? And I looked around, and it's about $2,200 to $2,500 a head at that time. And I thought, okay, well, I would charge about $2,500 a person to do a yoga training if I were going to do that. And I had 10 people sign up. And so that was the first time I really thought, I could really actually make a living off of this. I could support a business. I could support myself personally. At the time, my son had just turned 8 years old, and I really wanted to be home when he got off the bus. And I thought, well, I'm gonna go ahead and do that. So once that teacher training sort of came to fruition, and I got an idea of $25,000 in a couple of weeks, that's good. That's a good thing. In addition to the yoga classes, that's good as well. I took that initial money that I made off my first teacher training, and I invested it in filming a couple of yoga DVDs. And I did that because students were saying, can I have something to take home? I can't make it to class, but can you give me something to take home, some ideas? So I was tired of writing little stick figures down on a piece of paper of what people could do at home. So I hired a local person who was good at film, and I filmed a couple of yoga DVDs. And from there, I needed to be able to put them up on my website. People had started moving away and saying, would you ever do a newsletter? I want to stay in contact with what you're doing here. And so I had started a website about 2005. I filmed both the yoga DVDs. I put them up on my website, and I put an enroll button for people that's still there who might want to do a bi-monthly newsletter. And it gives you tips on little things you can do to deal with stress, to be more centered. It'll give little recipe tips sometimes. I actually have some sign-up sheets if anybody wants to join the email list. But so what happened during that process is I realized that,
We just pass these around.
yeah, if I could create multiple streams of income, and if you remember one thing I say, remember that word, that phrase, multiple streams of income, then the greater the chance I would be there in the long run. Because businesses will come and go, and entrepreneurs have great ideas, but no way to actually articulate those ideas into full manifestation. So back to my Brigham Young quote about everything being created spiritually before it's created temporally, and it's like, how do we marry those two things? And he himself said, it's a complex business, but it's kind of what we're here for in a lot of ways. And so in that process, I would continue to do trainings, and in those trainings, I went ahead and kept on filming things. I'd take a little bit of extra money, and and film different things. And since that time, I've done a whole bunch of different things. I have hair, which is lovely. You can see my long hair there. It'll be back soon, so I'm not worried. But I filmed all sorts of DVDs. I wrote workbooks, audio CDs. So now people can go to my website. My email list has gone from just a few people who used to practice with me to about 3,500 people that have found me online. And I'm selling maybe about $1,500 to $2,000 a month in yoga products off my website, in addition to the classes and the trainings that we do. And so it's been a long road to get to that space, to do a lot of this. But it seems like each time I've had the experience of saying, okay, I'm going to do just what I'm being asked to do. I might start by just teaching classes. I can do what I know so far. It's essentially what I'm still doing. But during the process of that time, people were asking me for more. And it took me a few tries on their part before I realized I'm being taught here what I'm supposed to do. I need to start listening to what people are asking me for and paying attention. And for me, that was sitting in meditation and sort of sitting with it, seeing how it felt. If I felt okay about it and really good about it, I'd move forward with it. If I felt distressed or like the thought was kind of incomplete, I'm not quite sure it's ready yet, then I wouldn't move forward with it. There's this thing with yoga that has to do with Om. Have you heard the Om? You know, people doing this and doing the Om thing, the Om chanting. The whole idea in yoga is the index finger symbolizes you and the thumb is God and the fingers are everybody else. So it has to do with connecting. And so that word, Om, or yoga, or Buddha, or Jesus, or mother, or father, it all has the sound of the name of God. So we're getting into yoga philosophy here. And that is ah, that ah. So when you have an aha moment, you're connecting with something. So when someone says something to me, like, would you do this? And I go, ah, it's like, I'm being taught. I'm being given direction in that moment. And when I have that aha feeling, kind of like, then you're on the right path. You really are on the right path. And it's really hard because that's nothing you can grab a hold of. I mean, it's not a business model. I don't know if you find that in the E-Myth, if they talk about aha in the E-Myth at all. But that idea of, that is something where there's some passion attached to it. You can really manifest amazing things with businesses. And it's really the path of the entrepreneur, is getting those ideas from that, how do I do that, into actually having it come to full fruition. And for me, that is a very intuitive, instinctual process. So I'm also an outside-of-the-box kind of gal. I don't know if you can tell that already, but this is kind of what the store page looks like, and people will enroll in my newsletter, and then they'll come back for more. Each newsletter that goes out will have a little link to the store page and some of the products that are offered there. So as time was going on, I was really being taught in working through something that I love to do by people asking me for things they wanted. And so when I started paying attention is when the business started growing. And it was probably between 2005 and 2007 that I had left the bank, and I had looked for a place, like, where am I going to teach yoga? Where am I? I need to have a space that's my dedicated space. I was continuing to do some certifications that I was saving some money from, and in that process, I kind of felt like, I've got these great ideas. I'm tired of paying rent. I want to have my own space that I can do trainings and different things out of. Because I went from a whole bunch of different spaces. From the basement of the bank, I rented another basement office up on Canyon Road for a while. I tried working out of a hair salon, but the clackety-clack up above didn't work with the heels and the hair and the whole thing. But so I was like, I started working for a doctor in a neurological clinic. And it's like none of the spaces were right and big enough, and it's like I really want to create my own space. And so I stewed with this for a little while. And my Thai office that I had started to do the Thai partner yoga out of full-time while I was at the bank, I got ready to quit, and on the day I was supposed to begin teaching or doing the Thai full time, the lady who my office was out of called me and said, my daughter's sick, I'm closing my office, I'm leaving town, I'm not going to reopen it, I'm so sorry. So here I had clients scheduled, and I got stressed out, and I should have done some yoga, but I got a cold, which was also direction, actually. I went down to my doctor's office, and they said, well, we have a space right upstairs. Would you consider coming and doing this here? And that was in Cotton Tree Square in Provo. Do any of you know where Cotton Tree Square is? The pizza factory is on the corner, and they're really neat ivy-covered buildings, and they've got these shake shingle roofs. They're really wonderful. And in that space, they gave me a little private office to do my private Thai sessions out of. So I had been doing that while I'd been moving my yoga classes all over town, trying to find a space that was really right for us. And so during this period of time where I had quit banking and I was making the kind of transition to full-time, having the right space dedicated for my practice and my students and the certifications and the different things and the home base, I was doing a Thai session on my partner who was in the office with me. He was a marriage and family therapist there, and I was working on him, looking out my window thinking, gosh, I've got all these people on my email list. I've got people coming from Idaho and Wyoming and different places now that they found me online to take classes because they want to come do a class in person with the lady on the DVD, okay? And so what do I do? What do I do? How do I find that space? And as I'm working on him, I'm working in the lunge, and I'm looking out the window, and there's this big sign that says Cotton Tree Inn right outside my window, and I'm thinking, gosh, I've got to have some place for him to stay. Sitting with that, and I realized, again, I was being given a duh moment. Duh, it's almost like aha, only it's duh. And I'm like, oh, this would be a really good space. And once I finished with him, I had gone out and looked through a Yoga Journal magazine that was in my office, and I saw this retreat center in Peru, and I looked at the room and I went, oh, that's what I want it to look like. And then I closed the magazine and I went back in my office and kind of washed my hands and did my whole thing. And then I thought, wait a second, you're being directed again. Because I had that feeling. It's like, okay, I have that feeling, so I've been shown what I like, what it should look like. And so I cut out that out of the magazine and I stuck it on my mirror and I just contemplated it for a little while. And so, one Sunday afternoon, while nothing was going on, I walked down to Cotton Tree Square, and I just I looked at what would be the center of this complex, and it was this clock tower building, and I kind of just walked around the outside of the building, and I thought, this ivy, there's this little trellis with little grapes dangling off it, and we're right by the Provo River, and we've got movies close by and shopping close by, and there's an inn close by, so people who came from out of state would have a place to stay, and I wouldn't have to provide beds and food and stuff for people, and so I thought, gosh, this is a great space. And I just kept walking around this clock tower building several times, just kind of meditating and contemplating on what I wanted. It was getting clearer in my head, and just kind of walking with it. And there's a wonderful poem, I can't remember who it is, I think it's Wendell Berry, that says, sometimes the truth depends upon a walk around the lake. And so that's what I was doing. I was having just sort of a meditative walk, and I wasn't sure quite how I would afford a building, because I was making good money off the teacher trainings, but it wasn't really enough to invest in real estate. And a lot of the places in Cotton Tree Square are very small little offices, so you'd almost have to reserve your purchase price and then almost double that for the remodel and have to tear down walls and deal with bearing stuff like that. And so as I thought about it, I thought, yeah, I don't know how it will work out. And I don't know quite how it will work out financially, but I know that this is kind of the space I want to be in. It would look like this, it would be like this, and I was getting my, kind of what I liked was sort of clarifying. This was about 2007. And I got a call from one of my assistants, former assistants at the bank, who said, you got to come to a meeting this weekend. They're thinking about selling Far West Bank. And I had worked there for 18 years, and I'd been a manager most of that time, and I put money aside. They take so much for stock out of what I had been making. They just deduct it from your pay as a manager, and you purchase stock in the company. And you know, I had just a few shares at they were about $400 a share because it was a privately held stock. And I found out that weekend that the bank was being sold, and my $400 a share stock went to $1,200. So they did a triple idea thing. And so I had a substantial amount of money to put down, and I thought, wow, now all I need is the space. And within a few mornings, I was walking into my Thai office, and in the clock tower, the building that I'd walked around several times and gone, oh, you know, there was a for sale sign, and I thought, I'm sure it's just going to be little teeny rooms. And the lady, when I knocked on the door and said, I know there's a room in this building for me, you know. And she said, well, you know, I'll show you what we have. And she showed me initially the clock tower, which is very vertical, lots of small little rooms. And I thought, you kind of have to cut it out into, just didn't feel right. There was no aha. And she said, you know, the other space we've got, you probably wouldn't be interested in. It's just a big empty room with a vaulted ceiling. And I was like, oh, you know, that sort of feeling. And it was like, I knew it. I just knew it had to be the case. And so I cashed in my 401k and rolled it into the real estate. I had worked at Far West Bank since I was 18, 19 years old. And I cashed in my 401k 2 months before the stock market tanked. And so I got full value out of my retirement and rolled it into my real estate for the business. And so, you know, this sounds very out of the box, but when it comes to separating out your business and your life, just like in the quote by Brigham Young, you really can't separate the two. And in our culture where we're headed, you're seeing people have less tolerance for things that are out of integrity. And so it's started to matter socially, your ethics in your business. And it's in our culture today, obviously with the economy crashing and a lot of bad business practices there, and a lot of that idea, we just don't have the same tolerance for disharmony that we've had in the past. We can't look things over anymore in the past, you know. I mean, it talks about in the last days your secrets will be shouted from the rooftops, and I've always wondered about that till Facebook. And it's like, I didn't realize I would be shouting my own secrets from my rooftop, you know. But things are happening culturally that businesses aren't working the same way anymore. They don't have the same tolerance for poor business practices. And a recession is actually one of the main positive things about a recession is to weed out those types of businesses, and it leaves the healthier businesses, or it makes people who had poor business practices have to get their stuff in gear and run their business more authentically. And then they'll sustain in the long run through the ups and the down times. And so I'm off on a tangent here. I'm sorry. My brother's an economics professor at MIT. So we have all these talks back and forth, and I'm talking energy and yoga and aha, and he's like, yeah, but the way I would describe that would be this, 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 and this, and he can give the technical things sometimes. But that idea of that, like, oh, this is right. This feels right to me. It's like, find something you love doing, that you have a passion for, and then find a way to make money doing it. And that is really the key to my story, is I found something that I developed a passion from, and then I've tried to find a way to make money doing it. So in that process, I closed on the office suite. I redesigned the inside and opened up the yoga center, and it's our home base. And that happened right before the economy crashed. And so, again, that was a tough time to start my business. So I was so grateful that I had private sessions I could offer, that I did certifications, that I had yoga classes, and that I had online sales. There are 4 primary streams of income that support Bodhi Yoga. And again, it was there's a certain quality to each one of those streams. My weekly classes, people who go through my teacher training have to fulfill so many hours teaching. And so that is how I staff my classes perpetually, with people who have to fulfill so many hours teaching to get their certification. They teach classes at the yoga center, and I teach about 3 or 4 classes a week, and there are about 10 or 12 classes offered. So it's sort of a mix between passive and active income, but I don't have to show up there every moment to get paid, all right? The Thai partner yoga, the private sessions that I do, that is active income. I have to show up to make that money. And so that is a very specific thing that I do because I love doing it. I love that one-on-one time. It's a great workout for me to move someone's body through assisted stretching for 2 hours. It's therapeutic for the rheumatoid arthritis that I've got in my joints and things. And so it's just been a really positive experience to have that. The next one is certifications, and for me that's active income. I have to show up. But ultimately, I could show up and teach 10 or 12 yoga classes a week at $12 a class or $7 a class or something along those lines. Or I could teach a certification that I now charge $3,500 a head for to 5 or 6 people over a few months, and I have to show up one weekend a month for that income. And so that is active. But my rate of return on that is much different than showing up to teach a yoga class or even showing up to do 2 hours at a time for $140, which is what I charge now for the Thai sessions. And then there are the online sales that's purely passive income. So the incomes do different things. It's not just 4 streams of income that I have to show up for and be there the whole time to make money. Some of them I need to show up for in order for any money to be made at all. Others, I can show up for some and not for other, and money is still coming in. And then, the online sales, that passive income has been really important to me with the breast cancer diagnosis. I had to make a decision, with that diagnosis of, what do I do? Can I treat this naturally? I mean, I'm a gal that maybe takes 2 Tylenol a year. I don't do prescription drugs very much. And so it was a very fast-spreading invasive cancer. And I had maybe 3 or 4 months if I didn't hop right on it and do something right off the bat. And so I also have a son who's now 14, and it freaked him out to hear his mom say, I'm not doing chemotherapy, no matter what, I'm gonna go do the natural route. And it was really distressing to my family. So out of respect for them and the fact the doctor said, you're not going to be here by Christmas if you don't do something right now, I did go the traditional medical route. And so that was quite a journey to go through that. I have lectured to many, many cancer support groups, and boy, do I have different stuff to say now. I have no idea, the intensity of that kind of treatment. And as I come through the treatment, and my hair comes back, and all of those good things, and I get my strength back, and I trim back down to where my normal space is, then I know how to rebuild. That I know how to do. I know what supplements to take. I know what yoga therapies to do. And in that practice, I'm learning a wealth of information that I don't know how I'm supposed to use it, but I can guarantee you I will be shown how I'm supposed to use it when I sit with it and get that that's what I'm supposed to do. So in that practice, when I had to be basically, out of commission, I had chemo treatments every 3 weeks, and you go down for the count, and then you're up for a breath of air about 3 days out of the 3 weeks. I'd make sure I was in the yoga studio and taught during those 3 days, so people could see I was still here, that I wasn't, teetering off the edge all the way. For my online community, it was... I knew I was going to lose my hair, so I had to get real with people. I did send out an email saying what was going on with me. Let's see. I hosted what we do, every so often at the Yoga Center, where we do a global wave meditation, and this is like sort of the wave at a football game, except it's meditation. And what I mean by that is we will send out an email. My email list is about 3,500 people right now, and it's in all sorts of different countries. I have people enroll from Tehran. I don't know how whoever, I can't pronounce his name, got the chance to enroll when he was in Iran, but I have people from all over the world, and so We did a meditation at dawn and dusk, and that's something I could do from my home. So here people know I'm here. I'm still able to teach. And so I sent out an email with my bald head, and we had people sign up and say, I'll send out a different thing. There I am with no hair. Namaste. This is our last meditation, so you just sit at dawn and dusk for about 10 minutes and you just contemplate the word completion. And it's not the end, it's the coming, but more of a coming full circle. It's a sense of everything as it should be. And the mantra for that meditation it was every 2 weeks I did this. I choose in this moment to feel those spaces in my heart that for now are complete. In this practice, I hold the space for wholeheartedness to become the nature more recognizable in all beings everywhere. And so I have people who would sit and just kind of contemplate these words for a few moments at dawn and dusk, and we tried to cover all the time zones. So as the dawn would roll across the planet, there would people be all over the world meditating on the idea of completion, which was our word for those 2 weeks. And at dusk, there's this wave, and you see the wave from NASA, that there's a wave that comes across, and it literally moves across. And so it's a really cool idea for all of the people on our email list to sort of connect up together. Really beautiful way. And for people to connect to me and not freak out that I'm toast when I'm still here, And so it was really lucky that I had that already set up to work with this. But here are some of the places in the U.S. These were all people that I just said, email me if you're going to do it with us. We had people from Slovenia and South Africa, India, Italy, London, all over the place join us. And we covered almost all the time zones. I don't know if we got anybody. We did get someone in Alaska. So I was able to continue doing something. And then after I sent out my email, each week I would just change the thing on the bottom that was for sale on the website. And each week, as I'm going through chemotherapy and different things, I had people from the center that were doing my shipping for me and would take care of all of that. I also brought in a gal that did my certification in Thai partner yoga. I've branched out my certification, so I no longer just do yoga teacher trainings. I certify people to do Thai partner yoga and something called quantum, which is a healing type meditation that you facilitate. And then people can make their own income off of that and start their own stuff. And so I brought in a gal to do Thai sessions out of my office and take my clients and just pay me $40 from every session she did. And it was very helpful. That's me and Tom before he was 6'1" and 220. My 14-year-old is 6'1" and 220 pounds. He plays on the offensive line at Timpview. And now he's 14 going on 30. After going through mom with breast cancer. It's been a big deal. But I brought Jamie in to do Thai sessions out of my office. So this is just a little bit of my story and kind of what I've developed through this practice. Yoga classes, people can come in and go to the website and see the different classes we offer. And it's just really branched out. My clientele that I teach to are anywhere from 20 up to 80 years old. And I don't know if you hook up to QuickTime here or not. I won't play this per se, but we'll see if it loads. Might not load. It's a video of Lynn, who's one of my prize students. He's 80 years old. He was a computer ethics professor at the Y for most of his life. And he's on my website telling his story about how he started yoga at 69 and he feels better at 80 than he did at 69. And so right now, as I kind of wrap things up for today, I'd be happy to answer any questions or anything.
What got me into yoga in the first place was my granddaughter. She's a physical fitness practitioner.
There we go. But in addition to the website, right now my thinking is on online yoga classes. Now I'm getting a lot of requests from my students that have never met me in person, that have just done my DVDs, and they want to practice online. And so I'm in the process of, I stopped while I was bald. I probably shouldn't have, but in the process of filming classes so people can join online classes. And, let's say just 500 people at $9.95 a month, sign up for that. What if, half of my email list signed up for that? $10 a person, 1,000 people per month. So the ways that you can create income off of something you love, and offer a service that other people are asking for and eager for, it's really been one of the funnest part of my journey. And thank heavens I was in banking for 18 years. I love the business side as much as I love the teaching of yoga side. So, but that's my story. So, for now.
Questions?
Yeah.
So if you were a novice and never done yoga before, can you take your DVDs and start learning yoga, or is this something you need to go in and have maybe with waves?
It's lovely to be in a class, but there are so many different styles of yoga right now. It's like, what do I like, what don't I like? For me, I would recommend you start out with a class with a teacher, but let's say you're too far away to do that. I've filmed a yoga DVD for people who have that exact question. It's an introduction to yoga, so it's a 2 DVD series. The first hour I'm talking about what yoga is and how it applies and why would you even want to do it. And the second hour is an hour-long class with many of my students at the center practicing with me where we teach it. So you can do it either way, but ideally when you start out yoga, it's good to start out with a teacher. And then the questions you want to ask that person is, how long have you been teaching? Because yoga is really hot right now, and there are a lot of people that are doing just real quickie certifications just to be a yoga instructor because it seems really kind of cool, I guess, or whatever. You're not supposed to say that word anymore. I don't know what it is now, but anyway. But ideally you want to do a certification where you can teach a lot of different styles of yoga. Most places that certify you will certify you in just a routine, and you're certified in that beginner's routine or that advanced routine or whatever. And what we do through our certification is we certify you in a broad range of yoga as a therapy, as a great way to stay in shape. Say you want to teach prenatal classes and just work with women who are getting ready to have babies and doing mommy and me classes. You might want to just do kids yoga. We've done all that at the center. So when we take people through our certification, we train them in all of that. So want to look to a teacher who's had some experience and some training and hasn't just been through a weekend course where they paid $500 and got a certification saying I'm a yoga teacher. Yeah. Anything else? Yeah.
How much are your classes right now?
Right now they are $12 to drop in. Your first class is free, so you can walk into the center and say, I saw Syl up at the Y. She said I could come try a class for free. Normally I have little cards for you, but I didn't get down to grab them quick enough. But it's $12 to drop in, which is kind of the going rate. And then for people that want to continue on, if they're new to the center, they can pay $30 for 2 weeks. And they can try out all the classes, see what they want to do. And then after that, they can do one of 2 things. Three things. They can continue to pay $12 a class, which is too much to pay for a yoga class. Or they can do a punch card for $75 for 8 classes. Or they can sign up as a member of the center. And when they sign up as a member of the center, it's like a gym membership. So I auto-deduct their debit card or whatever once a month. For 12 months, it's $49 a month. But we do a thing for students because we're kind of nestled right in between Branbury Park and Raintree. So Y-Mount, too, is real close by, where if students want to just sign up for one evening class a week, it's $30 a month. Or they could come to any of the morning classes, too. It's unlimited classes. So there are a lot of different ways you can price it. Thanks. Anything else? Okay.
Thank
Awesome.
you, Syl.
Thank you.
Appreciate you being here.